The next topic we will be studying is the limitation of sovereignty. So, although we have studied case sovereignty in itself is an ultimate power, is it the most supreme power? But there are some limitations on sovereignty that are mostly that are mostly self-imposed, that are not obligatory, but they are considered better to comply with these limitations. So there are moral limitations first. There is vast difference between law in books and law in action, that is said by Dean Pound. And what does it mean? That it means that there are some laws that are um, made but that are not enforced. Basically they are made to maybe say have a face saving. There are laws for face saving, and they are made to show people that the state has these laws, but these laws are very less implemented or very less consulted. So, moral limitations, how are they? For say, for a ruler, there might be some things that he cannot go against the morals of society. He cannot offer any laws or order any issue any orders that are against the morals or cultural values of that society or the religious sentiments of that people. So mostly the ruler or whosoever the sovereign body is restrain itself refrain from passing such orders that might hurt the population's moral, that might transcends the moral limitations that are set by the society. However powerful or despotic or absolute supreme a sovereign may be, he cannot be successful in floating a moral or religious sentiments, beliefs, inclinations of his subjects. That whatsoever he has in mind, but he will keep in mind he must not like hurt the feelings of his people or what are their held beliefs. Otherwise, he would provoke opposition, bitterness, and even revolt or revolution. On contrary, laws are easily enforced when they conform to the journal accepted morals, religious, and social ideas and customs of people. So, rulers or sovereign whosoever is, if if the sovereign is a person or a body or whosoever, they mostly try to conform with the moral principles, the religious affiliations, and the cultural values of the society they are ruling. If they issue such an order that is not acceptable to people, that they might provoke people to protest, and it will obviously lead to the unrest in the society. So they most of the time try to be in line or be within the boundaries that are not mandatory for them. They are not obliged to follow those moral limitations, but for the convenient rule or making it a it a smooth way, they most of the time try to keep these moral limitations. What are the natural limitations? There are some natural limitations. The sovereign cannot do what is naturally impossible. The sovereign will not be cannot issue orders like he cannot uh, change the timings of the sunrise, or he cannot change any other natural principle or any universal law, you can say. Like, it is about a worldly sovereign. It is not about the superhuman sovereign that we as Pakistanis have the sovereign as Allah Taala. So it is about the natural limitations for the sovereign who is a human or who a body of humans. So they cannot change the natural laws, or they cannot change the nature. So obviously their laws, their orders, or whatsoever their degrees will be according to the natural available environment or circumstances. Human limitations. So yes, uh, there are human limitations. They are both the limitations of those who are issuing the order as a sovereign body or a sovereign human who is enjoying the sovereignty over his society or his state. And there are the limitations of people who are being governed. There is some, we mostly listen to the news, like we have news like the people, लोगों के जो सब्र का पैमाना है वो अब खत्म होने वाला है, और कुछ इस तरह करके ना कि लोग तंग आ गए हैं या वो अब मजीद बर्दाश्त नहीं करेंगे, तो इस तरह से human limitations are there. So human limitations are important, that while keeping the sovereignty, you must know that your people have some limits, and if you will transcend those limits, they will rise up for their own rights, and they can revolt, they can protest. So in case sovereign is human, he has some limitations. Moreover, he has to deal with human beings. He must keep in mind that, yeah, he himself, if he himself is a human being, he must know that he is governing a body of humans, a society of humans. So he must not give the rulings like that are like not acceptable to human beings, or human beings cannot adopt them. So the limits of human endurance for subjects, कि how much they will tolerate, if it is a despotic ruler, or if it is a very tyrant, a very जिस कहते हैं मुश्किल regime है, या बहुत ही परेशान कुन कोई बहुत सख्त बादशाह है, तो उसको भी पता होता है कि उसकी अवाम की लिमिट्स क्या हैं. Moreover, the limits of human endurance for subjects, and they are the limits of individuality, expediency, and common sense for the ruler. It is said by Gilchrist how, for the ruler, that the ruler must keep his common sense, or his ruler, or whosoever the sovereign body he is, he must know that the limits of individuality. Okay, everyone is an individual, he has some limits and he must know them. And expediency, that how much adoptive the orders will be, and the common sense of the ruler, the issues, the orders issued, or the laws made are not against the common sense of a human being. There are limitations of for constitution, like there are some things, there are things mentioned in the constitution that you cannot go against, any of your orders must not be against those constitutional limitations. So there is a constitution, there are basically types of constitution, but the mostly practiced and known and established constitution for the modern world is a written and rigid constitution. We have a written and rigid constitution of 1973 in Pakistan. So the provisions of fundamental rights in the constitution are one of the limitations, that a ruler or whosoever the sovereign is, he must know that he cannot infringe the fundamental rights of its citizens. Such other provisions in a written constitution which legislature or the government has expressly forbidden to change, such as the parity principle in federal constitution. के federal constitution में there is a parity between the different units of the state na. So in a written constitution, sometimes it is mentioned that these provisions cannot be changed, they are forbidden to change, and no legislator or government will like try to undo them. Or basically the major limitations come in the form of the process of amendment, that the process of amendment is so lengthy and it needs so much of the consensus of the people, that it takes long time, or it is very difficult to amend the constitution. The structure of a state, example for this was the structure of the state, which is with a written or rigid constitution, cannot change except by a long and difficult process of amendment, which is a check on sovereignty. So it is kind of a check of sovereignty, but it is not really the limitation of sovereignty. And the difference between constitutional law and ordinary law, although it is not fundamental, the difference basically is that the constitutional law is more supreme than an ordinary law. That a constitutional law will take a long process of amendments, while the ordinary law can be just changed with a ordinance or a mere bill. Sometimes it happens. So, but it is not a very fundamental change, that very sharp lines between both of them. Above mentioned limitations are not limitations on the sovereignty of state, but the government. These limitations basically is not are not the limitations on sovereign. These limitations are for those who are exercising that sovereignty, like for say government, that if a government wants to amend a constitution, they must have a two-third majority. Like in Pakistan, if you are trying to amend a constitution, you must have two-third majority in both houses. So you can like smoothly pass that amendment through the parliament and senate, and then you will give forward it to the president. Or in case if it is if that particular amendment is about some province who is being directly affected by that amendment, so in case provincial assemblies will be asked to have a debate on that bill, on that amendment, and if they agree with the two-third majority, then it will be passed to the president. So it is a lengthy process and it needs a lot of consensus. So the limitation on the government is that any unconstitutional act, law, ordinance can be challenged in the court. Although in emergency situations, this right of challenging these laws or ordinances or orders in court is sometimes uh, not given. Like if it is a military rule or if it is a dictator, they might say that these orders will not be challenged in any case to in any courts, whether Supreme Court or any other high court. Representative of people can amend the constitution. It is a self-imposed restriction. It is basically limitations on the use of sovereignty, of the use of making on the legislation on making law, but not on the sovereign itself. The sovereign itself is making the law, so it will keep in mind while making the law that what these laws will be implemented. So the sovereign keeps these things in mind. So the next are the limitations of international law. So international law is not a binding on the states, like the constitutional law. The constitutional law is a binding, and it can be amended with the lengthy process. But the international law is a law for having a smooth relationship between the different states, and have a cooperative relationship between states. But it is not a binding on the states. The states can go beyond. So what is international law? International law is a code of international morality, which the states generally find it expedient to observe, that they think that it will be convenient to observe, that it will be good to observe it, no? Such that what includes the international law, it is the international law itself, the conventions, the agreements, the treaties, the customs. It is the customary law. And there are different forms of international legislation that will be the part of international law. Like the research work by the senior jurist is also considered the part of international law. There is no such thing as absolute independence. Even the state as a whole is not almighty. For it is limited externally by the rights of other states, and internally by its own nature and the rights of its individual members. Note Blanche. So we must know that the state, especially in the present world order, have some limitations for themselves. Like they cannot interfere in someone else rights or someone else's territory, and they have to work in a very favorable and a peaceful environment. They have external limits by the rights of other states, that you have to keep in mind that if you have some rights, the other states have to the other states also have those rights. And internally by its own nature, that what sort of structure this state has, there are many limitations for their geographical location, for their population, regarding their laws, regarding their structure of government. So they have to keep the sovereign jo power head that will keep those in mind, and the rights of individual members, that all the members of your society that you are governing have their rights. So it is not an absolute independence, but it is kind of, because international law, when it is with reference to international law, it is not binding now. So the international law, international limitations are not legal limitations, they are self-imposed and can be repudiated by the state anytime. And how can the state repudiate those self-imposed international law limitations? It is by breaching a treaty, by declaring a war, by moving out of agreement, or by any violation of international law, be it violation of sovereignty of any state, or something else. So, a basic distinction between internal sovereignty and external sovereignty, there's a map of Pakistan, and within the boundaries of Pakistan is the internal sovereignty of Pakistan. And what is it? The supreme and final power, absolute power, that is to command all persons and associations within the territory of that state. That within the territory of state, within its borders, the supremacy of the Pakistani law, or whatsoever your constitution is more supreme than any other power, any other person or association. And second point of the internal sovereignty is that it will not receive orders from anyone, be it someone within the Pakistan, any person, any businessman, or any influential person around the world, or any other state. So these are the 2 points of internal sovereignty. And what external sovereignty is, it is the freedom and independence of state from any control, compulsion, or interference by a foreign state or power. That no foreign state or power is um, have has the right to dictate states ki how will you act, or what are your limitations, or how will you um, behave in the international system. You have this liberty. It will not submit to their interference or command. So the state are not obliged to follow anyone. They have the right to formulate their own policies and everything. Treaties and international law do not limit the supremacy or external sovereignty of state. The treaties and international law facilitate cooperation, but they do not limit the supremacy of a state or external sovereignty of a state. There was one thing to keep in mind, like that in case of Bangladesh, it is believed that India aided the creation of Bangladesh. So there is a point, no state comes into being with the goodwill and by the grace of other states. That no state helps another state get that independence, or that it will not, even if after getting the independence, you must not consider it that the state you are helping in their liberation movement will ever like keep their policies in line with your and will have your dictatorship. No state comes into being with the goodwill. There is a struggle for the creation of state, and no state will follow you. But in spite of the ill will and hostility of them, that whenever a state demands its own right of existence, it is hurting or it is like demanding its rights from some other power, na. So, like if Bangladesh declared its independence, so it demanded its own sovereignty uh, from the Pakistan, and it was not we cannot say that India was happy with it. Maybe India wanted to keep it as a part, uh, as its part, or any other neighbor country who was powerful enough wanted to influence Bangladesh. But the thing is, Bangladesh came into being as a sovereign power, and it exercises its sovereignty, and it has all the sovereign rights. So here is de facto sovereignty and de jure sovereignty. There are kinds of sovereignty. De facto sovereignty is that by the virtue of people who submit themselves to you. Like for that कि कोई revolution start होता है तो उस basically it is for the revolutions or the changes, and it happens when the people, a bulk of people or in a society start to follow someone as a leader. So whatsoever orders or laws or principles are set by him, people follow him. So that is a de facto sovereignty that might not be legal in some cases, because the de facto sovereignty at times when if someone enjoys a de facto sovereignty, they might be uh, having a power tussle, or they might be going to overthrow another government. So the de facto sovereignty की एग्जांपल्स बहुत सारी हैं, जो जितने भी रेवोल्यूशन हम ये कह सकते हैं कि फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन, रशियन, और इवन इफ in any power transition mode there is a bulk of population or a bulk of society, or groups behind the person who's leading them. So that sovereignty, when a lot of people are following you, is a de facto sovereignty, and they can at times challenge the de jure sovereignty, that is a legal sovereignty. De jure sovereignty is the legal sovereignty that is recognized internationally, that is legal by all means. The example for this is that when someone takes power, for say if there is a revolution or there is a struggle for independence or whatsoever, so there are a large number of people that are following a leader. So what happens that this followership or this power of masses with himself is a de facto sovereignty. And if they gets to the point when they reach that ultimate goal, that power, or with the creation of state, or with the creation of a new system, and they get the sovereignty of the state or the legal sovereignty, then it is a de jure sovereignty. So de facto sovereignty can at times uh, transform into a de jure sovereignty, and they can both coexist. So another kind of sovereignty is titular sovereignty. It is basically from title. That कि किसी को आपने सिर्फ टाइटल दे दिया, एक जो डमी फिगर होती है, या काइंड ऑफ द समवन हु इज नॉट exercising that sovereignty, but he is titled to have that sovereignty. So the example of this are the king or queen of England, or president of a state. Most of the time the federal government have the president of state as a titular figure. He has the titular power, but he himself not has the sovereignty itself. The sovereignty is the actual sovereignty is basically it depends upon the system of government that you are living under. It might be with the parliament. The actual sovereignty might be with the parliament, the prime minister or the cabinet, or maybe a body of people, or body of institutions like parliament, like the combination of parliament, minister, prime minister, and parliament, prime minister, and cabinet, or at times the president himself is in the list. But the titular sovereignty is basically for the kings and queens for nowadays. They do not have the absolute or actual sovereignty power, but they are like a figure they will stamp, they have the stamp of sovereignty. कि अगर कोई ऑर्डर है ऑफिशियल, तो उसके ऊपर जो स्टैंप आएगी वो उनकी आएगी कि दे आर द important leader, and they have this sovereignty. But the actual sovereignty is somewhere else. It depends upon the structure of government. So the next other kinds of sovereignty are legal sovereignty, that is supreme and final lawmaking power recognized by law and exercised by a determinate person or organ of the state. That is basically a legal or definition or a lawyer's definition of sovereignty, and it concerns all with the legal powers. All rights are created by the determinate ruler or determinate person who is given the sovereignty, or the whosoever the organ of state that is using that sovereignty on his part. And he himself has made the law, and no one no one is allowed to challenge him, or no one or none's law he is obliged to. He is kind of an absolute ruler, absolute sovereign. So it is the legal sovereignty. The political sovereignty, as Dicey says, behind the sovereign, which the lawyers recognize, that is the legal sovereign, there is an other sovereign to whom the legal sovereign must bow. uh, he is the political sovereign. So, if there is a sovereign who is having a legal sovereignty, we have a determinate person is a person who has the right to exercise sovereignty. Now, सो उस लीगल सॉवरन के को बज़ाहिर ये लगता है कि वो लीगल सॉवरन जो है उसके पास एब्सोल्यूट पावर है, लेकिन उस एब्सोल्यूट वो जो एब्सोल्यूट सॉवरन लीगल सॉवरेनिटी की डेफिनेशन के मुताबिक है, उसके पीछे भी कुछ ऐसा फैक्टर होता है, ऐसी पावर होती है जो उसको भी कंट्रोल कर रही होती है। ये पॉलिटिकल सॉवरेनिटी का कॉन्सेप्ट है, एंड दैट बॉडी इज पॉलिटिकली सॉवरन, and the body which is like kind of keeping a check on legal sovereign has the political sovereignty, the will of which is ultimately obeyed by the citizen. और जो political sovereign की जो will है, वो will है जो कि जो citizens हैं state के, वो obey करते हैं. Its nature and location different in differs in different state. हर different के state structure और उसकी power का जो भी structure है उसके लिहाज से जो पॉलिटिकल सॉवरेनिटी है वो शिफ्ट कर सकती है एक जगह से दूसरी जगह. सो इट मे बी द पावर ऑफ पीपल, कि वो पीपल जो पॉलिटिकल सॉवरेनिटी की जो पावर है वो लोगों के पास हो. इट कुड बी पब्लिक ओपिनियन, इलेक्टोरेट मतलब जो वोटर्स हैं उनके पास हो, और द डोमिनेंट क्लास जो भी उस सोसाइटी का जो भी क्लास सिस्टम है उसमें जो डोमिनेंट क्लास है उसके पास वो पावर हो सकती है. और अ सेक्शन ऑफ पीपल, या किसी एक इंस्टीट्यूशन के पास या एक सेक्शन ऑफ पीपल के पास. उसमें एग्जांपल्स हैं आर्मी की, लैंडेड एरिस्टोक्रेसी की, और अ पावरफुल प्रीस्टहुड के. बाज़ औक़ात रिलीजियस जो आपकी वो होती हैं ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, वो इतनी पावरफुल होती हैं कि वो आपकी पॉलिटिकल सॉवरेनिटी उनके होल्ड में होती है. इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द नेचर ऑफ अ पर्टिकुलर स्टेट, बट इट मोस्टली कंसर्न्स द पॉलिटिकल सॉवरेनिटी मोस्टली कंसर्न्स विद what kind of the state you have. A popular sovereignty. The idea of popular sovereignty, as you all know, popular means that is most of the people are agreeing to it. The idea of popular sovereignty was first presented in 16th and 17th century, but the high priest for the popular sovereignty is J.J. Rousseau. In simple terms, what political sovereignty is, it means the supreme power ultimately lies with the people. That the masses, those especially with the power to vote for a change, have the most power or have the sovereignty. That government should be based on the consent of government, that whosoever is in exercising the power of government or using the sovereignty of a state must must have come to that position with the consent of people. It has agitated human hearts, organized peoples into powerful revolutionary forces, and toppled down several thrones and ancient monarchies. And that is the example of every the popular sovereignty की example में हर revolution आ सकता है. Wherever a despotic ruler or a change is overthrown, or a change has come, especially with a revolution like French Revolution and Russian Revolution, the people, the masses stood up for their rights, and they overthrew that government, whosoever government or whatsoever system it was.